Welcome, every guys, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pawel the Cat with my very smart co-host, Evan.
Okay, my name is Evan REV Renaerts. If you want to reach me, it's at REV. But can I just say, I think Pawel is up to something tonight. I think he wants more airtime, or he's wanting to take a show off. And just a big welcome to everybody tonight. Lost Trucker, how you doing, man? I see you, Mike, Christopher. Guys, thanks for jumping in early. Man, how was your week, Pawel? It's been a crazy week.
It's been a busy, crazy week for me, but I'm glad that it's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. because I get to talk hockey, one of my favorite things out the week. Lots going on, taking care of two kids can definitely have its moments and trying times, but, you take it day by day, as they say, right? It's like managing a hockey club, but these two just don't really adhere to the rules and to my coaching methods.
So, hey, I was just going to say, do you remember when Brad Marchand licked the goalie, or was it another player? Was the goalie?
No, wasn't it Anthony Cirelli from Tampa Bay?
Oh no, I wasn't sure, but I got thinking. We teach in the language of behavior. I teach this course, and when I'm teaching, and we always talk about why do kids bite, right? It's because it's
Ryan Callahan.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, yeah. So, but we talk about why kids bite, and we talk about how the strongest muscle on their body is their mouth. They can actually inflict damage. Well, I think we recognize Brad Marchand's strongest part on his entire body. He can inflict more damage with his tongue than with anything else.
We got a great show for you tonight. Go ahead.
No, I'm looking forward to talking some hockey all around the NHL and around the world.
100%. And we got a Brad Marchand story to get into. So get ready. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We've got our stuff on our website. Go check it out. We are always writing the latest articles from a variety of writers. Go give it a follow. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. We are close to 1,000. Keep adding those numbers. We greatly appreciate it. YouTube, give us a follow there. We try to put out content all throughout the week to get you guys engaged. And of course, we are always on Twitter/X, Evan at REV, or myself at hockey_2. We're always talking. Now, go ahead.
Can I just say that I am amazed. Some of you guys following hockey, Oregon. That's so awesome to see in Oregon that you guys are following us on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'd like to give a shout out also to over in the great state of Tennessee and over to Ohio as well. So it's great to see some of those numbers high. And I have to say, the number one running state in all the United States that follows us the most is the great state of Nevada. So thanks, guys.
100%. So let's get into it because we got a lot to cover, Evan. It's been a lot of news around the league. I want to get into it. First off, you mentioned Brad Marchand and some of the antics. There was a recent interview that he had about from one of the reporters out in Boston who talked about how there's a bit of a rift in the locker room and how there's a bit of a tension between him and Pasternak. Now, if you go watch that interview, Brad Marchand shuts that down very good. He talks about how people will post things on a podcast like ours, but without actually factually checking. Yeah. And then went on to post on his own Instagram story some of the highlights with him and Pasternak and how good friends they are and how they have to come together and get out of this slump because they've been going through a bit of a slump. But it just goes to show you, Evan, and I'll get your thoughts on it, that you have to be very mindful about reporting and about how you approach players, right? Of course, you have to be objective. You have to definitely criticize, but you have to be mindful about what you say and how you report it. Because if you missay or misspeak about something, players are going to go after you. Teams are going to go after you. Maybe coaches go after you. And it's possible that your credibility takes a shot. And that's the one thing that we here at Two Guys try not to do. We love to speculate fun things, but never anything bad. We try to give an honest review, but we try to wait for the facts. Now, we may not always be the latest and greatest, but we try to get to it. Your thoughts?
So this is interesting because you and I have talked off air. And again, I won't get in deeper. If you guys follow us, you'll know more around what I'm talking about. I've been careful on some stuff. I've got some information. And I did not share specifics. I talked about what I think I know. I'm glad I didn't go. And I didn't actually, as much as it looked like the sources were right, because it appears that a little bit of what was going on in a story with some of the NHLers actually was a whole different ball game. still connected in the way that I thought it was, but totally different context. And that could have, even from a very simple thing. I mean, who are we? But still, you know, we got to be careful. Just because we hear or something doesn't mean it's actually true. So, you know, can I just say, let's speculate. Brad Marchand, I got thinking. Let the guys understand this is speculation. Just throwing this out there. This is tough. Brad Marchand got pretty heated in that conversation about, like, what are you guys doing? You know, and some people said, well, why would you defend yourself so strong? Because he gets sick of it and he's more open to talk about it. But you know what I would like to see, because I do find this weird. I know David Pasternak's not a vocal person, but how much stronger would it be for him to come out also? Because they're trying to change the culture and make changes, to come out and say, you know what, Brad and I are great friends. We connect. Just like a McDavid Draisaitl rift, or Nathan McKinnon and Cal McCarr, or Rantanen or something. Do you know what I mean?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wrapped up.
I was going to say that's a twofold answer, because I look at it as two ways. You look at a situation, and it's been talked about exhaustively about Vancouver that we talked about last week, you know, with the JT Miller situation and Pettersson, where players don't like each other. And we hear behind the scenes, there's certain players that don't gel with other players. But when you're winning or you're successful, that gets put to the wayside, right? That being said, I think for Pasternak, when he's looking at something like this, he doesn't want to justify it or dignify it with an answer, because he'll be like, why am I even bothering talking about this? Like, why would I even bother to entertain this? Because that's giving this person who is reporting this airtime, which is why I think sometimes people say that. Granted, the one thing to also remember, and I think this is something that often gets omitted, a lot of these players English isn't their first language. And so you'll hear sometimes, and you see this all the time, Evan, when they do an interview overseas in a Finnish newspaper or a Swedish article or audio podcast, and then all of a sudden it gets misconstrued or misinterpreted in terms of how it's being conveyed. So you got to be mindful. Maybe Pasternak goes, why do I need to justify it? Or maybe he thinks, you know what, my relationship with Brad Marchand is known to Brad Marchand and me, and the teammates maybe, and nobody else has to know. So I think that's kind of where it's at. Now, I will go ahead.
Yeah, I'll let you finish your thought.
No, go ahead. I'll let you.
You're jumping off. What it got me thinking about is, you know how sometimes people think, why didn't they respond, like you were just saying, and the reasons why. Also, I think people need to take into context when it comes to legalities, like even on charges that are laid against players or allegations and stuff. Why don't they respond? Because of legal matters, you got to be careful, because even trying to defend yourself, people can read into it, can be used in court, in lawsuits, maybe, like, even why didn't Evander Kane talk about things that, you know, his ex had said, and because these are legal matters. And even if you say something to defend yourself, the public court of opinion doesn't really matter, and it's not going to change. And that's why a lot of these people are not on social media.
100%. Now, speaking of Kane, because we're going to be jumping around all over the place, it sounds like he also had successful knee surgery recently. And so, you know, there was a few eyebrows raised around the league because of the fact that first they thought it was his sports hernia, which he had addressed. And all of a sudden he's going through successful knee surgery, and people are saying, what's Edmonton doing here? What's going on with the Cat? We have some people on the inside of the Oilers organization sharing that, you know, they've seen Evander around the league. He seems to be doing okay. But the thing with that is that, Evan, you and I both know we could be fine doing daily walking to and from our jobs. But when you're exerting and getting into that physical intensity of a hockey game, that's a completely different motion. Those are different muscle groups that you're moving. And so it takes a different kind of exertion. But I'm glad to see that Evander Kane got the successful surgery and that it was beneficial. We will see if he gets back just before in time for the playoffs. Do you think then he will be able to get a few games in, or will Edmonton try to extend this so that he's back for game one of the playoffs, which it looks like, and again, nothing is set in stone, the Edmonton Oilers should make the postseason? So,
well, actually looking at the numbers right now, they don't even have to play 500 hockey to get into a playoff spot. So that, I mean, it's essentially an in no matter where they're placed. So this is interesting. And again, this is the Hart Levine So just a heads up. What you'll notice, one of the partners that we work with is Puckpedia, and Hart Levine, who started Puckpedia, is your new cap friendly. They share all the waiver. Go check it out, puckpedia.com. But that could be wrong, and maybe some of you are more knowledgeable around the cap, and you've been reading a lot of his material, and you can find, like, he's got to search to find all the different pieces. But my understanding, if he comes back, it affects the cap not just as in those 2 games, but literally his season is prorated around a certain number, and they could be on the haul for a large number if he comes back. So I'm going to make a prediction just based on that. And I know this sounds like you're circumventing the cap, but I think that's what they all do anyway. I don't think he's coming back till the playoff, and I think it'll be a Kucherov where he's skating a month before. And then he comes back in game 1 or game 2 to start the playoffs. So that's
and he could be skating at any point. It's a matter of if you're participating, like, what does that look like? Are you in a non-contact jersey? Like, there's different levels that people have to understand that come before you can actually physically get back. And sometimes in certain situations, they'll ask him or a player to do a stint in the AHL, so maybe for Bakersfield, right? Just to kind of get your legs moving and get the feel of the game and the ice. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll be monitoring this story, but I know that's something that it's raised a few eyebrows around the league. Now, I did want to get into a few other things because there's quite a bit of news. But speaking of the Oilers, amongst them, there's a few other teams, including Toronto, Ottawa, I'm hearing Minnesota, about 6. Darren Dreger was reporting that John Klingberg, after successful hip surgery, will be returning potentially to the league. He was playing for Toronto last. It seems like they're open in bringing him back. I'm guessing a 1 to 2 year deal at a minimum, no more probably than 2.5 million. Somebody who needs a quarterback power play, maybe even on their PB2, somebody who can play and put up minutes. Evan, what are your thoughts about John Klingberg potentially returning to the league? It sounds like Edmonton could be the front runners, but I mean, he and his agent will have to make that decision.
Well, I actually find this one quite interesting because we know coming back, there's no guarantee of it. And maybe, the Oilers, if they do have interest, and I'm going to say just because he was putting it out there, that it looks like it's always a possibility around that. But I want to recognize he may be a tall, but he's only 185 pounds. But here's the key. He shoots right. And what are they looking for? The right shot. And they could be working with Nurse, who's supposed to be more defensive. As long as Nurse will stay and play back and not jump up too much in that case. But, if you think of it, you're taking a risk factor. Is it worth it? But maybe they could be thinking, well, we could always play him on the third pairing to get started coming in, and then kind of see in the worst case it's just a salary that they don't, by the time the playoffs hit, he's just an extra. I think the dollar amount will matter a lot, but he'll probably take less to be on. So what were the other teams mentioned? Because I was busy today.
Toronto and Ottawa Senators, and I think Minnesota Wild has shown some interest, and that's the names that have kind of been out there. And, up to, I think, 5 or 6, 7 teams have shown to kick the tires. Yeah. Well, what does that mean? Maybe they just call them just to see what does that look like.
But,
right?
And let's just say they're all equally. You guys show your thoughts who you think would be a good match too, but who could be really potential. What I'm wondering, Pavel, is Toronto. Yeah, I know you guys are going to make fun of Toronto in the first round and all this kind of stuff. They're still a top team, like regardless, okay? And I think they're much better this year to be a playoff team, by the way. And then Minnesota is like playing out of their mind, and that team it's only looking bright for the future. I consider them a top 8 team in the league right now, kind of like Dallas was coming on last year. So Minnesota, Toronto, obviously Edmonton will give him probably a shot for the top 4, at least feel they'll make a conference final if that's what he's looking for. But they do have, who's there? Ekholm. He's a Swede. Very possible.
Now, Hans is tuning in. He's a big Toronto guy. He's talking about what the point is of stealing Stanley Cup rings. Like, wouldn't you be able to sell them, right? Maybe off
Malkin.
What's it called? Yep. Maybe take off the diamonds, I guess. But yeah, that's too bad for Malkin. Yeah. So As people may not know or have heard quickly, the story was that Evgeny Malkin was in a game, I believe it was versus the Ottawa Senators, and his home was broken into, and the 3 Stanley Cup rings were stolen, amongst, I think, a few other things. Of course, police are investigating, but I got to be honest, that's ridiculous. Like, why would you take the Stanley Cup ring? Like, you're going to be found. You're going to get charged. You know, you're going to serve some time or pay a penalty. Any thoughts, Evan, on this story and the silliness? Like, why?
So I'm not sure if you saw. So recently, there's been lots of sports memorabilia being stolen out of NBA, Major League, NFL, a lot of that. And this is about black market, because someone will know and they could actually buy in the black market. And then later, you know, it suddenly appears in 10, 15 years and stuff like that, you know, along the line. Maybe they sell at a half of what the going price would be. I do find this interesting, but with so much happening in the last year or two, it makes me almost wonder if this is a little bit more organized, right?
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see.
Sports mob. Hey, sports mob.
Whoever you are, just please return the rings to Evgeny Malkin. He doesn't deserve that. No person should ever have their home robbed. It's never a good feeling, but you know, what can we do? I wanted to quickly get into a few little things. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about is the game between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Anaheim Ducks, and the fan base, the Philly fans, let Cutter Gauthier really have it with some of the terminology and words and signs that they talked about after everything that happened. And if people don't recall, he had requested a trade out and was traded to Anaheim for Jamie Drysdale and a pick due to the fact that he believed there was no room for him in that team. But according to the team's rep, which was Daniel Briere and Keith Jones, essentially, you know, they said that at that season in 2022, it wasn't a good season for them. They were on the bottom, and they didn't want to bring him up. You know, Cutter Gauthier has kind of made it for talked about how, you know, that's his thoughts and private reasoning why he didn't want to go and stay in Philly. The fans are going to be the fans. But your thoughts on this whole situation, because it was an electric and dynamic game, and the prior game when he was in Anaheim, it was a little bit more lackluster. So this one, you can really see it. A few guys wanted to fight him. You know, because it is about the logo on the front of your chest. And so your thoughts on this story and just kind of the little saga there.
It makes for interesting and fun drama. Definitely. It's interesting. Anaheim doesn't care. There wasn't much interest in Anaheim. They're just like, hey, we're glad to get him. Philly at first, some of them were mad. Some of them were angry. Then they're happy because Jamie Drysdale's there. And then they're upset because Drysdale's hurt. Now they're complaining. And then he starts playing.
Well, he had a goal in the game. Drysdale had a goal in the game.
Oh, no. I'm talking about the history leading up to. And then he gets back, and now he's excited. Their fans are all kind of getting excited. Let me just say it this way, regardless of what people think. And I was going to bring this up for tonight too. Just a little while ago, last week here, there was the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And a Toronto Maple Leaf fan was mocking in the crowd, and they come out, and another guy takes it and starts plowing on him, just beating the crap out of him. Why? Like, come on. But can I take you guys back? This is Philadelphia. And I'm not saying that looking bad on Philadelphia. This has been their fandom for over how many, like for decades upon decades upon decades. There's always crazy fanatics. That's what a fan is, a fanatic. And they're getting drunk, they're partying, and they get angry and they get bothered and they take the game so serious and personal. So they took it personal, man. They've had a lot of downtimes. Like if Philly just won a cup last year or the other year, and then Cutter asked to go somewhere else, do you think anyone cares? No.
Yeah.
I don't think they do. If they're winning and doing well, I don't think they actually care the same to the fans. They care I
think there's something there, and I would agree. I disagree with you because I believe that it matters that people want to play in your state, and people want to play for your team and for your organization.
Let me turn that around. Okay, let's just say Garnet Hathaway says, I want traded out of here. I don't want to play here, but I'm not going to tell you why. Do you think the fans are going to care?
Yes. Yes, they will.
No.
Yeah.
They don't care.
They oh, are you kidding me?
No way. Like, why would you care? It's Garnet Hathaway.
See, it doesn't matter. Why would you? Because no. If you're telling the fans, I don't want to play here, but I'm not going to tell you my reasons why, that right there is trigger and fodder for the people. You know, but you're angering a fan base. Why don't you want to play here? People would turn on you. That is a very passionate, dedicated fan base, and they would be upset.
Did you see Chris Pronger back in the day when he didn't want to sign, and the word came out because of his wife?
It's a different media landscape. It's a different media landscape.
Okay, hang on. Whoa, Lance. It's worse now than it was back then.
Exactly.
Back then already, because they knew, and Chris was honest about some stuff, and then people speculated about stuff. They're burning jerseys. There's celebration of burning in jerseys in Edmonton, and they're sitting there and they're making death threats and calling her the meanest verbal abuse words for the wife because she doesn't want to be there and stuff like that. It's insane. And it has nothing to do with the landscape. Fans have been like this. It's just that now with social media, people are more out there. They've been doing this for decades. People are mad at Adam Larson because his father passes away and he doesn't want to be connected to the city. And many people, even though they heard the story around it, they actually want to get more information from him. Listen, it's none of your business. The guy doesn't want to be there. So how about Adam Fox? He didn't want to play for Calgary. Why didn't Adam Fox come? Why aren't they freaking out on him? The guy's a superstar.
Because he never physically played a game for them. He was drafted by them, but he never played for them. Larson, I've never heard people in Edmonton get upset that he left.
Oh, man. I don't know where you were following.
Hi, Colleen. Great to see you. And Hans says it's probably because they have the Rocky statue. I would disagree. I think Chris Pronger was more honest about things. I think Cutter Gauthier, who was drafted, you're in the top class. You are being interviewed by teams, and they will ask, do you want to play for organizations? Because they will determine whether to draft you. It is good capital. And you're telling me that, no, I disagree.
Okay, you can disagree all you want. That's not going to change the matter. Let's go to Johnny Gaudreau. Let's continue this. Johnny Gaudreau, right? Right up to the last minute, Calgary's excited around Johnny Gaudreau. Now, God bless him. He's no longer with us. But the fans were so angry because they were told that he's staying. This is the plan. He could have told them ahead of time. But Johnny never said anything about anything, right?
So who did?
So why didn't Johnny? You're saying Cutter should tell them? Well, then Johnny should have told them, and Johnny didn't bring it out. All there was speculation. So Johnny owed it to them? No, they didn't. Why didn't Matthew have to tell them? Why didn't Matthew
tell them? He did tell them.
He didn't tell them why. Did he tell them? What did he say? Yeah, what did he say? You find me.
I'd have to look it up, but he did tell them that.
Look, okay. So what we're going to do is I will eat one of my dirty socks. I will try and chew on it and suck on it for the rest of the show. If you can find me factual proof that Matthew Tkachuk gave them the reason he wants to leave Calgary and sign somewhere else. You find that anywhere, not speculation, but out of the mouth of Matthew Tkachuk, and I will take that. Now, what are you going to do if you can't find it? Probably nothing.
I'll admit that I was wrong. I will admit that I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
That doesn't sound like you're really behind your bet. Okay, we probably should move on.
I think the landscape has changed. It was a fun atmosphere. Granted, the violence between the Toronto fan and the Philly fan, I don't condone that. I don't condone LA kind of violence. I know that there was some over in the NFL arena recently. I'm not a fan of that. You know, you can banter, you can, pick at each other, but when physical aggression gets involved, I'm out. It's not worth it.
Let me ask you a question, Hans. What did Hans say about Russia?
Oh, he said that thanks for the answer. Makes sense. Going back to the black market, maybe the rings are in Russia by now with Putin. Joking.
Hey, could you imagine? That could be a conspiracy theory starting right now, Hans. You are the man that brought it out. Started right here.
So Tkachuk was on the Spit and Chicklets episode and talked about how he did want to extend and talked about it, but the contract situation didn't really go well. So he said throughout the process, he was just like, I want to sign 6, 7, 8 years. What are we doing? And nothing really came from it. Right. And so, and then what Tree Living told him at the time when he was GM, he said, you know, the only way to keep the team together is signing you for 3 years. I was like, okay, well, this isn't my ideal situation. So he wanted to be what's it called? But when he realized that the management couldn't keep him for long term, that's when he's like, so you know what? I guess I'm gonna go somewhere else.
That's not an answer. All he was doing, he had a year left. He told them about it a year ahead of time. Maybe it was a contract negotiation he didn't expect to maybe go, but the fact that he gave them a list of places where he was willing to go, told us he should have said, I want to play in the US. Cutter is not giving you the full story either, so there's no difference. Let's move on. We're never going to agree on this one.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, there's a lot to kind of get through. The other news for
half an hour in.
One of your teams, Tristan Jarry, has been put on waivers today. Now he's in the second year of his.
You keep calling them my team. You keep calling them my team, dude.
Well, you're a big fan of them, aren't you?
Okay. That's right. You're a big fan.
I guess you're not a big fan. So. He struggled this year. He's gone 8.74 with an 8.66 save percentage and a 3.32 goals in 21 games. He did sign that big contract for $28.66 million with a cap hit of 5.38. You know, they're kind of battling it out there. I think they're just a few points out of that wild card spot. Evan, your thoughts on Jarry doing that? Is this going to be something similar like they did with Ilya Samsonov or Samsonov, as they pronounce it, in Toronto, or is it going to be more of a Jack Campbell situation in Edmonton and now in Detroit and Grand Rapids?
I wonder if this will be a Jack Campbell situation. I can't see them moving out from the contract. A first thing we'd have to ask ourselves is, just by pure numbers and stuff, is there a team that's wanting to take a chance on Jarry, maybe go through the same process? Can they afford it if it doesn't work out? So my question would be, would Chicago be interested in picking up? Would San Jose be interested? I don't think San Jose has any interest. They're good.
Nope. No, they're good. They have their depth goaltender.
Who has cash in their cap right now? Is there anyone lower on the totem pole that you guys can think of? And that's what I would do. I'd look and see, because they would be the only ones to pick up the waiver wire and take that contract on. But
I really thought the only team that could potentially do it, but they don't need it anymore, is Colorado, just because they were struggling, and I think it would have been
money. I don't think the money.
No, I agree. If but I mean, you know, that was the one exception. But they had the money because they just re-signed. But although I believe maybe it's for next year, Mackenzie Blackwood. So I mean, who knows what it is? I think he'll pass through waivers. Maybe he'll go down and rebuild his confidence. He definitely needs it. But there's definitely an area of growth there. So it's definitely going to be something we're going to keep an eye on, but you definitely want to make sure that you have good goalie tandem, especially if you're Kyle Dubas and you want to make Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and that group and Chris Letang happy. You want them to be competitive and potentially make the playoffs, right? Speaking of goaltenders, I wanted to quickly talk about Levi Merilainen out in Ottawa. Ottawa's in a playoff spot. They've been doing very well. And this kid has come in. He's played a few games. He shut out the New York Islanders on Tuesday night. He's 22 years old. He's a good prospect. The team's doing very well with Linus Ullmark out of the lineup. They did re-sign Ridley Gregg a 4-year, $13 million contract, and I'll get your thoughts on that. But I wanted to ask your thoughts about Levi Merilainen and just this young goalie coming into this very hot situation in Ottawa, where they're also, again, competing for a playoff spot, and they're doing well. And we know that Ottawa has tended to struggle in the past, but somehow they're still sticking it in there, and they're getting the saves. And when you get the saves, you get a chance to win every night, right?
Yeah. You know what I'm always worried about? If you guys remember the Hamburglar, so, you know, when he was over in Ottawa and they come in and they play really well for a certain period of time, I'm always worried at jumping too quickly on liking what you see, because they have a confidence. They come in, and sometimes the team plays extra well defensively because they know the type of player, and other times it's good chemistry and there's a good fit for the team. there seems that this goalie, and it's interesting you just brought him up because I've been actually kind of watching some of his play, and I'm like, it's pretty solid. His basic foundational. He's not trying to be extra fancy or anything through it. Just a solid, and he seems very composed. You know who he reminds me of? A little bit, not so much his overall game, but his how poised he is. Mike Richter when he first came in with it. So this will be interesting. By the way, before we wrap up goaltenders, give me a moment though when you kind of go to something else if you're on goaltending catches.
Oh, you can go ahead right now.
Okay, so what I'd like to know from you guys out there, fans of hockey, if you like goaltenders, one thing that I loved as a goaltender was the fact that you got to wear a mask. Like I love the Friday the 13th concept. Like I was a big fan. The first goalie I fell in love with was King Richard Brodeur during their Stanley Cup run against the New York Islanders, who just was a straight helmet with the cage. And then saw Grant Fuhr. Well, I didn't like him originally because I was living in British Columbia as a young kid. I love how the designs. I love Tony Esposito with the glasses. There's always something different. And so I bought helmets and done different ones that were pre. So I ended up putting my money together and getting something. Oh, yeah, Cujo. Right. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there was molds of his. So when I went to do this a while, so I'm going to actually show you guys something. So I found someone back in the day. He had just started doing some WHL helmets. And so what I was doing, so when I played for my team, so I just want to show you guys this if you have the video. So the team, I got a V. I played for a team called the Voodoo when I was playing in the local rec leagues. So I got this with a chain. So if you'll notice on the side, now if you look at the downtown, it's a landscape picture. So it's harder to see if I get a little closer of the downtown. And then I had a hand coming in, as you can kind of see, that went underneath with a chain and it linked over. There's the guy's hand coming over, sorry, and ripping down the side of the city. And then on the back, I actually had the tags of my 3 daughters and my wife. Now, these helmets, when you build these helmets, I'm always fascinated. Markstrom has some of the best. Yes. I mean, amazing. I like his new one that he got this year. Another guy who, like him or don't like him, Carter Hart, had some amazing helmets. I'm curious, even if you're catching this a little later on. Well, playing for the Voodoo, Evan, do you ever perform a Voodoo? That's a good one, Jordan.
He's probably just saying, Jordan, I think Evan were probably saying that, not the WHL, not the WHL, not the WHL. What I think I'd like to see more of, and I don't think the NHL is really good at this, is more marketing of more stylish helmets. Now, granted, I understand there's limitations, but I wish there was more because there have been some cool designs, let alone some concept art that you can go online to see of cool helmets. And I would
Dwayne
like to
Rollison. Remember Dwayne Rollison, even with Minnesota before and Calgary, and he had some really good ones even then when he got to Edmonton.
100%. And so you wonder to yourself, like, why can't the NHL do this, right? Or have something cool and then sell it, right? Like sell it as memorabilia or maybe like a miniature version of it for that team. Oh, you can make a killing, right? Fanatics, if you're listening, there's your $1 million idea, if not more.
Well, and we'd like to get a little bit of kickback. Maybe allow us a little bit of merchandise.
If you turn around, I'll put my foot up and you can get a kickback. Now, speaking of some other stuff around the league, I brought the jersey out tonight. This side, there it is. The Nashville Predators. There was some reporting by Elliot Freeman on Saturday headlines how there's some teams that have inquired about Ryan. The name is escaping me now. Who's their number one center?
Ryan O'Reilly?
Ryan O'Reilly, yeah. I'm drawing a blank. This is the problem. Ryan O'Reilly, and he doesn't have a no movement or trade clause per se, but it's been talked about how potentially he would be treated as if he had that, because I know some teams could definitely use a second line center, and he fits that mold. Former Conn Smythe and Stanley Cup winner. He's an elite player. He's a leader. But it seems like he's pretty settled in his roots. And I know Nashville probably wants to just kind of tinker a little bit, Barry Trotz probably wants to fix some things up and get ready for next season because it looks like they're out of the playoffs because it didn't go the way that they planned. But your thoughts on just Ryan O'Reilly and the Nashville Predators, and where do they go next in terms of potential movements? What could be happening? Do they just reset for next year, Evan? Or is there an offer out there that a team can make to acquire him, and they can go to him and say, you know what, you can benefit from one more deep cut run?
So just taking a look, he's got 2 years left, but it's 4.5. So they could very well pick up a potential, like get a first round pick because there's some term left on that. If they ate just a little bit of the money on that one, right? Could they get a first and a second?
Possibly. I'm sure a team would be willing to give that up.
So you're doing the first for a term that's low, and you're eating the money for a second round draft pick.
Well, remember what Tanner Jeannot got, which was insane from Tampa Bay.
That was way too much.
Yeah, I know. But he's thrived there in LA, so good for him. And Jordan says Mike McCarron also on the move out from Nashville. Yeah, they're making a move. I think the one surprise people were talking about was William Carrier, who went over to Montreal and has really succeeded. Evan, I want to talk to you quickly about Montreal before I get to the big topic that I wanted to kind of get into it. What do you think of the Montreal Canadiens and their deep run that they've had in the last little bit and beating some really intense teams and really being competitive after the team struggled? And I remember, I think it was around November, people were calling for Martin St. Louis' head. They wanted him gone. Your thoughts on Montreal?
So I feel like this is deja vu because you asked me questions about Martin St. Louis last week. But I understand.
People want to know.
I know they're one of your favorite teams, so you want to talk about them. No, I'm joking. I think right now they're going to headline news. There's a lot of stuff going on around that team. We all know they've had some good players. They've been building a system in place for those players. And in fact, that people may not actually know this part, but Ivan Demidov, their draft pick, May 31st, his contract ends for the KHL. They extended the timing of it, so he's not eligible to come over until that period of time. So if they were in the playoffs, I'm not even sure if he can jump in at that period if they come that late. I think it's got to be before the playoffs. So he's not eligible, and that's going to be a next year. I had not, up to 2 years ago, I was not happy with the development of what I saw. I'm actually getting excited along with a lot of other people what is being built and put in place in Montreal. I think there are only a couple moves of literally jumping up into a top 10 in the league, like a couple key. Can I just say this? I'm sorry, I know you guys like Monteval, but they need a goalie. That is, I think, their one missing piece, like a lot of teams, but they need like a bona fide top 10 goalie in the league that's solid, that they can trust, that can be consistent. But I like what I see. I like the development, and even players like Slafkovsky, maybe he's not going to be a true number one draft overall. It's going to be a bit, but if he can play top 6 and still be able to make a difference, how can you complain?
You can't.
End of story.
No, fair enough. I agree.
Yeah.
Some good points.
What's the part that you, what do you like right now that you're seeing in Montreal that's, that you would say, hey, that's.
I think things are clicking. I think they have bodies where they need them. I think Patrick Laine, although, I know he started with the injury and it wasn't a good thing, has really been able to kind of show up that power play. I think a lot of their guys are playing very well and learning the game and really feeling more confident, including Cole Caulfield, who's back to his old self. I know he struggled there a little bit. I think it was like a year and a half ago. Nick Suzuki, one of the best two-way centers that's growing as a player. I would call him Bergeron light. He's getting to that level. I think Lane Hudson has been very impressive and could potentially be a very strong, powerful, defenseman for them in a couple of years' time. I like how he plays, and what I hear out of Montreal fandom is that he's kind of the real deal. He really makes good, smart plays. Granted, he's young, and there's a little bit much pressure put onto him, but I think he can live up to that hype.
So,
And I
hey,
like the game. Go ahead.
Lane, 10 points in his last 10 games. In the last 5 games, the guy has 9 points for Lane
Yeah,
Hudson.
that's
Like,
what I'm
I
saying.
mean, that's incredible. The guy's only 5'10". He's only 165 pounds. People have no clue.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's very impressive. So you guys can let us know your thoughts about Montreal because yeah, it's fun when Montreal does well in the league, the rest of the league benefits. Now I want to get into a bit of an interesting rant of the night, so we're going to get to that.
Puckpedia brings you
Rant of the Night.
calling all hockey fans. Stay on top of your game with Puckpedia. It's the ultimate source for NHL salary cap information.
Okay, guys, so I got a bit of a rant of the night. It's nothing wild, but I'm sure you've heard it. I've had a few discussions about this with people online, and Evan does not know anything about this, but I'll get him to comment right after. Connor Bedard, great player, has had a really good start to the season. Then he kind of slipped off a bit. But, Evan, even though the Blackhawks are struggling this year and they're expected to take a little bit more of a step, they're not where they want to be. They're dead last in the Central. There's been quite a few injuries, and people are talking about how he's a bust. He's not good enough. He is kind of washed up. There's been some interviews where people talked about how he looks defeated. He seems tired or exhausted. He doesn't know what he's saying, things like that. I got to be honest with you. This kid is in his second year. People have a sophomore slump. Things happen. He still has right now, Evan, in 44 games, 12 goals and 27 assists and 39 points. Granted, he is minus 21 and he has to learn how to defend. They've changed up their coaching. So hopefully that is an improvement. His line mates will change from night to night, and he's getting played against the biggest boys. He is, and this is not a bad critique of him, a bit smaller. So he has to learn how to adjust, how to play the game for his size, like Cole Caulfield, like a Johnny Gaudreau did in his past, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn how to adjust your body and how you play, because if you're going to be playing against the top guys, the top 4 units, which most teams would probably play against Bedard because he is an excellent playmaker, this kid will be a good stud, solid player for them. He will be an elite player. Give him time and stop bogging down. It's year 2. It's not year 10. Let the kid play the game. Let him find his confidence. Let him enjoy and reset so that you are ready for next season. But I don't think this kid is some kind of bust that Macklin Celebrini all of a sudden is better because he's on a hot streak. And don't get me wrong, I love Macklin Celebrini. Really fun to watch. But wait till next year to see how Macklin Celebrini can follow up the year. Connor Bedard came off a Calder win last year. The kid can still perform. Did he struggle for a bit to score? He had 7 or 8 games he couldn't score? And yet he still, Evan, has 12 goals and 27 assists in those 44 games. And the season is only halfway done. It takes a while. People figure out your game. Coaches can, during practice, and even during the iPads on the benches, can say, okay, this kid likes to do this and that. How do you change it up? He will learn. He will also learn how to be a captain, which he will be one day, I guarantee it. Nick Foligno has that job. There's a reason Nick Foligno got the C on his chest, rightfully so. This kid is learning from Nick Foligno. There was a great clip last year that showed Nick Foligno talking to Connor Bedard on the bench saying, there's so much I can teach you. I wish I had more time. I just hate hearing people talk on Twitter/X how this kid is not amounting to anything and he's going to be another Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's funny because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has always been a top 6 player from day one, and the guy is a 2-way defensive forward, and he scores like 0.88. So first of all, Bedard, 0.9 in his career, 0.9 points per game, and you brought a very good point up. When they're smaller and they're overperforming at a younger age, and now they're playing men, big, heavy men, adjusting, and the speed of the game is increasing. He is not, he can skate okay. And I think that will be something, his explosiveness for bottom speed, because he's so shifty and agile around. And that was what helped Nuge early on. But let's look at who's the fancy car today, right? That's what people have got into, I think. And so now, like, people were all over Mishkov. I think our friend Tommy Basco with Flyers Nitty Gritty, journalist down in Flyers. I mean, he had an honest thought, but he was excited for anything they got over, say, 45 points in a season. Well, I mean, the season has gone great, but now he's dropped off as far as production. There's some learning curves, things around it. I would like to, this is what I'd like to do. What if I told you you could still become what some would call a generational player, or at minimum, a franchise player, even if you didn't have a point a game coming in? Can I, guys, take you, and I don't think anyone's going to debate how incredible Leon Draisaitl is. His first season, he had like 9 points in 37 games. They sent him back to the WHL in a trade where he went on to the Memorial Cup. The next year, he only had 50-plus points in just a little over 70 games. The next year after that, he got less than, it was closer to a point a game, but he still only had around 77. Next season after that, you guys hearing this? This is Leon Flippin Draisaitl, who's considered the Deutschland Dangler, the German Gretzky. He got like around 70 in just about 80 games. Then in 2018, he took off after that massive playoff in 2017. They signed him for this contract, which he earned it, but no one thought he'd deserve it. And he basically started at a 100-point season every year if you went by points per game on the shortened season. So, I mean, everything totally changed. He's looking again at a year where he's going to be in the 100-plus points. So is he a generational player? I don't actually think Draisaitl is, because he didn't have the same success early. But that was 4 seasons without a point per game, and he's a big, tough guy. But he had to make adjustments. So that would be my thought, Pavel. And I think you make a great valid point that he's smaller and learning how to cope with the big, tough guys.
I will throw out a bit of a stat. So when they played Calgary, he had his 12th goal of the season. That was his 100th career point. Very impressive. He's the 24th teenager to score 100 points. And just for comparison, some of these elite names. So Crosby did it in 80 games in the 2005-2006, right? He matched Austin Matthews in 112 games. So did the exact same thing as Austin Matthews. Would we say Austin Matthews is one of the best players in the game, Evan? Yes, probably one of the best goal scorers, right?
And I think he's a franchise player.
He also beat out, listen to these names, Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche and Jack Hughes. McKinnon did 100 points in 143 games, and Hughes did it in 160 games, right? So you got to tell me that, this kid is not performing. Nathan MacKinnon is a Stanley Cup champion. He's having a Hart-like season. Yeah. And you look at Jack Hughes and what he's overcome and how well the Devils are playing now in this year. Yes. It took a while. But I think the problem is that you need to give it time. It's not an instant. I hate the argument I see is players get drafted, they play one game or one season. Well, they're a bust. Evan Jordan says Evan doesn't think he's generational because from the WH. Evan, tisk. I just wanted to rant on that. I appreciate it. That was just one thing I wanted to get off my chest because I saw a lot of people commenting on it. It seems silly. It's just off. Now, I wanted to get to one more thing, and I'll let you get to your next topic. Connor Hellebuyck, because I just talked about the Hart. Connor Hellebuyck seems to be having a great season. Evan, he has 6 shutouts and 6 losses this season. It is rare for a goalie to get the Hart Trophy, given the state of the game right now, right? Yeah. But your thoughts on Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets and what he brings to that team, especially since they potentially need to, like Toronto, prove it in the playoffs?
Well, I do everything I can to not like Connor Hellebuyck. I don't know why. Maybe I'm jealous. I keep thinking of why he's going to fall off, how this is going to change. Even I remember last year when was it last year or the year before? I'm getting my years all messed up. In the playoffs, in the playoffs, right? So in the playoffs, all of a sudden, Yeah, they're like, oh my God, it's terrible in the playoffs. It's a one-off. It's a few games. That's all it takes. Your team can change it. Everyone in front of you. He cannot be, right now. I actually think he is more consistent than Shesterkin over in New York. And look at the contract he just got, and the contract he signed. Winnipeg got I know I think the age he's a few years older, but this is a steal. And I'm telling you, Winnipeg has to do everything they can to be all in and pull an Edmonton kind of over the next few years to do everything they can to attract players to get them there, because I think they're building well. Their defense was a mess, and somehow they pull players out from all these places and start building again with these players, and they come to the forefront. So I like their coaching system. I like what they develop. Even his backups. Even their backups, when they go to play there, they seem to do well. I think Connor you know what I see Connor Hellebuck? I actually see him potentially, when he wraps up his career, going in and doing goalie coaching and stuff like that. Maybe being, or the goalie whisperer, the new modern day Sean Burke kind of concept, because I see what he's doing. I'm amazed. In fact, I almost feel like I put him right there in the top 3 on that heart, between McKinnon and Draisaitl and him.
And I would say Kaprizov is out there, although he's been injured in the last little bit. And Jordan said Jets going to have cap problems with Ehlers and Connor.
Yeah,
I really think Ehlers is gone. I think he's gone, and he'll be a good pickup. I'm looking at someone like San Jose potentially, who could play alongside Macklin Celebrini, and they want to add that depth there and be a little bit more competitive, and they have the cap space to make it work. Wow. One more thing before I get to Around the Rink, a little bit news. I did want to mention that the Columbus Blue Jackets did re-sign Zach Aston Reese to a 1-year deal worth $775,000. Zach Aston Reese has 4 goals and 7 assists in 42 games. After being claimed in the offseason or just prior to the season in the waiver wire from Vegas. He's been a good fit, and don't look now, Evan, but the Columbus Blue Jackets are sitting in a second wildcard spot. So it's pretty impressive that they're competing, and wouldn't it be incredible for the league and for the memory of Johnny Gaudreau if they can make it to the playoffs and make some noise and maybe potentially be an upset like they did a few years ago? Your thoughts on Columbus?
How about their Russians? Like, who would have thought that this year it's just like a breakout, low drafted picks? I like the good story. I like the little bit of this. It's not really Cinderella because they've been building and building and they just haven't got forward. I guess in some ways I wanted another good draft pick for them, not just to make the playoffs. But in light of everything, I think the team and I think the family and all the friends and surrounded, I think it would be a good feel-good story to make the playoffs, especially when we're looking like a bottom 5 team for quite a while there, and then making that change. So, yeah, hats off to them. Hats off to the coaching. They have done a fabulous job around it. So I guess the question is, what do they need to go over the top, number one? And number two, there's all this talk of Provorov. Do you think something happens?
Yes, I do. I think he gets dealt at the deadline. But don't look now. Kirill Marchenko has 18 goals and 30 assists and is a plus 26 in 44 games as a right winger. He's been a real good, solid pickup. The one thing with Columbus I will say is goaltending. Merzlikins needs to be a little bit better, and they need to improve that end. And if they can do that, that's good. But both Marchenko and Zach Werenski, who right now is in my Norris nominee, probably top up there, top 3. I would say that they're playing at their best level, and I like what I'm seeing out of Columbus. So I'm really happy.
That's awesome. Yeah,
go ahead.
No. I said I like those stories when you see more parity in the league and teams being able to make turnarounds. And I you know who I feel needs it the most, and I know this might seem selfish, but from a spectator, the fans of Columbus who have been going out to these games and supporting the team, they need to ice a winner. It's time.
Yes.
And so I hope ownership continues to build and not try to backtrack. They've had a lot of injuries too. They've been a lot like Montreal. So you're looking at, I think, Columbus and Montreal, 2 teams that have been bottom feeders for a while, starting to make that rise to the top. So look out if you're in the middle or starting to fall. Not too many teams are like Washington, and can do a 2-3 year rebuild, because that's what it's looking like in Washington, right?
That's true. Now we're going to get to a little bit outside of the NHL, and we're going to look around the rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
Is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
All right, around the rink, we love hearing things that happen beyond the NHL. And one thing I wanted to report on, and Evan, I'm sure, would love hearing about this, is the American Hockey League is hosting soon, February 2nd and 3rd in Palm Desert, California, their AHL All-Star Game. Now, this isn't like the NHL. These are some of the best young prospects and players in the AHL that have been performing, including players like Grand Rapids Sebastian Kosa, who's a Detroit pick, goaltender, Denton Matejchuk of Columbus that we should talk about, and Utica's Seamus Casey. They're getting a player from each team, Matthew Savoy of Edmonton, as people recall. And it should be a fun event because these are some players that, really come out and shine. And not every player can make it to the NHL, but there are some really good AHLers out there, Evan. And I just wanted to highlight that this is the league that develops players that go into the NHL, and they deserve a lot of credit because they play in all these markets and really learn how to connect with that market and community and really make it beneficial. So if you are in a market where you have an AHL team, go watch them. It is great hockey. It is close to NHL hockey. And a lot of what the NHL does, they will often try in the AHL just to get going. So it should be fun. I'm going to be tuning in because I look forward to it. And sometimes these players can really showcase their talent. Any thoughts on the AHL All-Star Game, Evan?
Yeah, the only difference is vets do get in, so players who are kind of career AHLers, if they've had a good season, they get rewarded, which is wonderful because some of those AHLers do make the move eventually when they're let go of their teams, and instead of an AHL contract when they know, they kind of veteran out and they end up over in pro leagues over in Europe and places like that too. So yeah, you got to love it. I remember because living in Edmonton, when the Oilers farm team came to Edmonton during that time of the lockout. And so they were called the Edmonton Roadrunners at the time, coming from Toronto. Fabulous, man. So go check out. They got great hockey.
Yeah, and I know this is kind of borderline NHL, but Rob Brindamore was able to score in an alumni game. And if you go watch the clip of him, it was pretty impressive to see that he can still lace up the skate and pretty much do what he was able to do in 2006 in that Stanley Cup run. I know that they were celebrating Eric Stahl's retirement, which was kind of a big deal. But, he did a really cool goal. So if you haven't had a chance, go take a look. The guy is 54 years old. He looks better than I do at my age currently. So it's very impressive. Your thoughts on Rob Brindamore and how he's not yet in the Hall of Fame? It's insane.
Yeah, amazing guy, amazing player, amazing coach. The guy, I don't know what else he hasn't done. I mean, if that's not about hockey, I don't know what else is, man. There is some news I'd like to talk about around the end. There's a ton of stuff. We're wrapping up our show now. Can I just say this year, if you're not familiar, so Hockey Canada this year, last year, they measured up the number of penalties that were called by refs in Hockey Canada sanctioned leagues. That means not obviously BCHL and so forth. Anyway, they took those penalties that were called for discrimination discrimination-related offenses. So that's like slurs related to race and religion and sexual orientation, gender identity. It rose last year by 40%, the penalties that were in relation to that. So I'm really interested this coming at the end of the season to see if that increase in penalties actually made a difference this year, because you don't just change how you speak and how you do things on the ice just because of a few penalties. It takes a lot of work by an organization. So I like to mention that. Two other things I want to mention. Now, some of you are not familiar with what's called the CSSHL, is the Canadian Sports School Hockey League. So Andy Oakes, who's the president of the board for the league, has gone into the board with some strategies that they're looking at. They have 38 programs, over 124 teams from British Columbia to Prince Edward Island, and they want to strategize. There's possibilities of some new reforming. Since the NCAA opened up, it has become a new landscape. The rule changes. You're going to make money now in the NCAA now through nil. If you think about it, the CHL is going to have less players. They're going to head over to the end. They're going to make money early. They're going to be able to make over there. And so, of course, they're taking a lot of them from I have my own beef with some of that going on. For example, Hockey Canada, right till February 10th, they're allowing players to be signed throughout the season. They never allowed this before. But, of course, they're taking them from a non-sanctioned Hockey Canada league. Why aren't they taking them from the AJHL? Why aren't they taking them from the Saskatchewan? Because they want to send a message. Some people say, oh, good on the BCHL. They stole players. No, they didn't. They just didn't want to be bullied. So don't misread. You got to get a better perspective on things. I don't like what they're doing, but they are taking over 40 players now have come out of the BCHL and moved over, and there's still going to be about a month left here. Now, the question, though, is they're looking at, could the NCAA, potentially it's being looked at, actually sign players to contracts now in the future? And Europe, pro leagues in Europe are now scouting junior eligibility players to go over and play, like the guys like Austin Matthews did, to go play over there as well. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going around. The landscape is changed. And I will like to say, though, 5 ex-BCHLers that are now in the WHL are on the new central scouting list. And 4 current BCHLers, by the way, 2 or 3 of them are out of the Sherwood Park Crusaders team that formerly was the AJHL that moved over to the BCHL, are from there. But can I just say, you want all these players, I just want you to get a thought. They have 9 players that would essentially have been BCHL in the central scouting, and you're all worried about the players they have. Like, and what are you doing with the current players? Remember this, if you're a BCHL fan, there's players that are disgruntled being treated the way they are in the Canadian Hockey League. I was going to say WHL, but then Jordan's going to say, what do you have against the WHL? But across the leagues, mostly the Q is the one who's benefited the most, though. Can I say that? With the number of players. So there is a lot of stuff that's going on around hockey when it comes to the older junior players.
100%. And I do want to add, is there anything else you wanted to finish off with, or can I just finish off with this?
No, I'll finish off with a final thought. I'm good.
Okay. So just 2 other things, because you've been talking about like some of the junior leagues. Just reporting quickly that Zach Hyman's family, who plays for the Oilers, recently purchased the OHL Bulldogs in Brantford from the Michael Andlauer, who owns now the Ottawa Senators, as well as the Spit and Chicklets team. The crew bought some stakes, so not the full team, in the expansion team that they're building in the ECHL. So it looks like everyone's trying to get in a piece of the pie of some of these smaller leagues. And I got to be honest, Evan, this is a good, lucrative thing because there is a lot of good potential and money in this. And so I can see why people are investing in these teams, because there's going to be a lot of growth in hockey, especially with how things have turned out in the World Juniors. And I'm sure that there's people all around this country right now, amongst the world, but more so in Canada, looking at it and saying, you know what? We are going to continue to develop the best next talent. We want that because that's going to give you stock and recognition, and people are going to turn to that. There's more to this than just season ticket holders, right? There is value and just identity in terms of what you're presenting. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I just wanted to throw that out there because that's been around the link.
No, I love that. I love the idea. And I'm especially excited about the ECHL. I feel like it doesn't get its fair props. It's a minor of the minor. So they basically. What
I'm saying is that if somebody wants to prop us up and help us buy a team, we're happily run it.
So this is how we would work it. Obviously, I'll take the vice presidency and be the vice president, and Pawel will step in as the general manager and wants me to have no involvement, and he'll make all the calls.
I will definitely.
Oh, hang on. And then Pawel will hire Jordan to oversee and see which talent we can bring from the WHL.
Well, he just stay in the WHL league, so he would do that. just as a final thought, one of our sponsors, Calcasta Battlers, they shut out 12-0 loss in Summit City. It wasn't the best. But
Sorry,
you
guys.
know, we like watching them. It's a fun team. If you're in the area, go check them out. They're fantastic hockey. Any final thoughts, Evan, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, it's been another great week. I'd like to say I found it really interesting. The NHL Draft's going to be held in LA at the end. It's going to be on at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles. It's the first decentralized draft. I might have already mentioned this last week, but if you don't recall it, what's going to happen is the teams are going to select from their home bases, wherever their arenas or wherever their main offices are. But get this, the first round, they'll have a ranking, and then maybe 10 players that could be in the second round or 15 or 20 are all going to be at the Peacock for the first round, but they're not having someone that's there from the representative of the teams. So why do you bring all the players when there's no one specifically? So what's going to happen? Is Gary Bettman going to stand up there and then on video they're going to welcome? There's no hugs, there's no shakes, I don't know, man. The NHL, leave it up to them to really mess up something, what was a good thing. And it generated so much interest, even if it's a bit of a loss.
One of their best. There's our cat. There's the cat. This is why I'm known as a cat. He wants to be part of the show.
Hey, can I say something, Cat? So right now, I got to go upstairs. After I'm all done here, I got to connect with my wife, leave my palatial studios, and I got to look through. I might be getting a cat. But just so you guys know, I'm a dog guy, and this is pretty hard. So my agreement was I need a cat that's like a dog. So we're looking at a Maine Coon cat, which are huge, that could actually be bigger. So my cat, hopefully, if I get one, will look like a dog when it's full grown. So I'm excited. Maybe I'll go over, take my Maine Coon cat, and go see the cat. And his cat will all of a sudden look like a kitten next to my Maine Coon.
I think that's an interesting idea, but I don't know if you have the pause to really commit to this. So we'll see. That's a terrible dad joke.
Okay. Hey, guys, you guys got to know this. Another nickname for Pavel is Pause also. So that's actually kind of funny. Good. You are getting the dad jokes now down, man.
We're just rolling in it. So I don't think anybody else appreciates it. But we're going to finish off just here with our final thoughts. But before we do, we do want to send our well wishes to all the people of LA during the fires. It is horrific. We know that game with Calgary was canceled and it will be postponed and rebooked. But get help wherever you need. I applaud the LA Kings organization, amongst many others that are involved, but most of them in the NHL stepping up and collecting donations, funds to give out to those in need right now. It's a harrowing thing. Wherever you are, hopefully you are safe. You are getting the help you need. And hopefully that hockey can resume, because that is a very passionate hockey-based fan. That team is excellent right now. And our thoughts are with you right now. Any final thoughts, Evan, before we wrap up?
Well, what you're asking, I'd like to give you another final thought.
Final.
So the only final thought is I'm looking forward to next week getting back to Reds 15, and I'm going to give you my number 7, which you're going to find a total surprise of what you're going to see at my number 7 ranking next week on Revs Top 15 for the NHL Entry Draft NHL 25.
I look forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. Remember to follow us at hockey_2 or Rev and Ev. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. We are on Facebook. Give us a follow. We're close to 1,000 followers, which we appreciate, and we post daily. We are on Twitter/X. We are on YouTube. Give us a follow, subscribe. We try to put out content. We are on Instagram. We love communicating with guys. Email us, write to us, message us. We want to hear from you because you guys make this show possible and you make it great. And we will continue to put out articles all throughout the year as the year transpires. We've got our former guests on there. We've got previous episodes and everything you want to know about hockey. Make sure to give us a follow. Evan, it's been a rig-a-ding-ding dandy. I can't ever say that. And, I have to practice in front of the mirror. But it's been a fun time. I appreciate your insight. I did say you were smart, and you brought some smart, thoughtful insight tonight. It was great. We will be back here next Wednesday. As always, what do we say?
In the meantime, and in between time.
Keep your sticks off the ice. Stay safe, guys. Cheers.